Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
Believe every human being is a potential coder.
Quizzical mind, somebody that likes to solve puzzles.
Someone who can work within a team.
I think you have to be quite meticulous.
You have to persevere.
Intelligent enough to understand the logic of the code.
Have empathy for their users.
The first thing is patience.
Likes to solve riddles. A good coder is someone who can think through clearly and implement their idea into code.
10 years ago, we were coding for computers, but now everything is a computer.
A lot of the redundant and rudimentary stuff we do as the developer will be taken over by these automated processes.
Things like human brain interfaces and machine learning and neural networks.
Potentially a new language that doesn't even exist yet.
I still believe we have a bright future, despite self-driving cars and artificial intelligence.
Interacting with a keyboard-less layout.
I think we're going to see a lot more voice interaction with devices.
Hopefully not computers coding themselves. This would be like, how it's called, the singularity, right?
I code because I love coding.
I code because I love, for me, it's like a brain puzzle.
Because I'm a builder, and I ran out of Lego bricks.
There's a lot of creative juices that flow when I write code.
Because I like making things, basically.
Coding's fun. It's a fascinating, wide-open field where you can do anything you absolutely want to do.
Having a problem that you turn into a solution through code is one of the most beautiful things in a job that I can imagine doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bruno Borges and Stephen Chin.
Hi, Steve.
Hey. So welcome, everybody, to Oracle Code San Francisco and JavaOne. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of a great developer community. How many of you came for the Oracle Code event today, the Tuesday event? Great, great hands over there. Thank you so much for being here. JavaOne attendees, how many JavaOne attendees? All right, lots of Java folks. Open World attendees? All right, cool. So we got a good mix. And I think the most important thing to share here is what is Oracle Code, what we've been doing. And the funny thing, a couple years ago, Stephen and I did a Java tour in Brazil, and we decided let's do 10 days driving a car in Brazil. Not safe, don't do that ever again. So we thought, what if we could go bigger? And we thought about Oracle Code events. And we decided, let's go big with this. Let's go to 17 countries, 20 cities around the world. We went to Asia, we went to Latin America, we did here Canada and US, and we went to Europe. Plus, we went to UK. So, thank you so much for everyone who participated and watched all of our content online with more than 350,000 viewers.
So you remember where we announced the Oracle Code event series, Bruno?
It was last year, here at Open World in JavaOne.
Yeah, so anybody here for the community keynote last year? Yeah? A little noise? All right, and that was where we announced the conference series, and we were crazy. We actually made 20 cities happen. My family's not talking to me. But it was good. And we're back in San Francisco now for the 21st event.
And it was a great, great show. We had what you see at the developer lounge, lots of those experiences that you are interacting over there. We got some versions of that at all of the 20 cities that we went to. And everyone could interact with all those technologies, Java, JavaScript, databases, cloud services, containers, etc., behind those experiences that Stephen's team, with the collaboration with many Oracle folks, helped build and bring to you again here this year. So thank you, Stephen, and thank you, our team. The other thing that we want to talk about is you guys, you developers. You don't write Java only. You write SQL. Who writes SQL code here? There you go. Everyone writes SQL code, whether you like it or not. You're going to have to write it. Who writes JavaScript code? I know you don't like it, but you got to do it. But you also are now writing Docker files. Who's writing Docker files here today? All right, cool. Lots of Docker users. And you developers are writing all of that together. So when we thought about that, we figured, like, Oracle code cannot be only about Java. It cannot only be about database or JavaScript. It has to be about everything. Everything that you developers do on your job or for fun. So we thought about that, and we also thought maybe our initiative should maybe change. And to talk about that, I would like to let Stephen speak.
Sure. So I'd like to announce we're making a big change for my team in particular, which is the Oracle Technology Network Group. So we decided we want to have more engagement with people, with you guys, with the community, with developers. We consider all of those things Bruno said as developers. So database administrators, database developers, people doing JavaScript, Java, new languages like Rust and Go. And our new team name and identity is Oracle Developer Community. So you've probably seen this around the conference. We do engagement at events. We do lots of cool demos. And we engage with you guys, the community.
So thank you for everyone who was part of OTN for decades. You are now automatically part of the Oracle Developer Community. And we welcome all developers to be part of this community as well moving forward. So thank you, everyone, for that. Next, also we have the developer portal, which Stephen can talk a little bit more as well.
Yeah, so Devo, developer.oracle.com, is a new site which we actually launched last year at JavaOne. And we've really turned it into a great technology resource. We have videos from awesome folks like Lucas Eder, you can see up here. We have technology articles. We have examples of how to implement and use different languages together with Oracle Cloud and some of our products. And it's a great resource for you guys to learn more about what we do and also about the events we've been talking about. So it's also the portal for all the Oracle Code events, including this one.
And not only that, the way we reach out to the community and the way we bring the community together has also changed. We did a rebrand on our social media properties to reflect that this is about developer community, not about a network of technologies. This is about you guys. So we had we changed the Twitter handle, we changed the brand, the logos on Facebook, on YouTube channel. We did a lot of changes, and we are now also introducing our Oracle Devs on Medium, which if you have an article to contribute about Oracle technologies, about open source technologies working together with Oracle, we'll be happy to take that as part of that aggregation channel. And Stephen, what else do we have?
So you can also do a lot of online activities as follow-up from what you're learning at the conference here. So we have massive open online courses, or MOOCs, which we run, where you can sign up and train. We have Oracle Code Online, which is the online complement for the conference series, where you can watch videos, you can interact with the speakers through moderated chat. A developer newsletter we launched, where we're highlighting all of the new features and articles and content that we have for developers across containers, microservices, Java, JavaScript, Oracle Zip Lab. So this is happening in the developer lounge. You can first grab yourself a nice beer at our IoT cloud brewed beer, and then sit down and do some hacking at our Oracle Zip Labs. And we have a leaderboard, and we're giving out prizes at the end of the conference for the top folks And finally, engage with our advocates in our larger communities. So we kicked off a couple new advocacy programs, the Oracle Developer Legends, the Oracle Developer Champions, and we also are creating an internal speaker bureau so you can engage with folks from Oracle who implement the technologies.
And the most important thing about this is, I mean, community is important, but communicating properly with the community is also important. If you don't communicate the right way, through the right channels, you don't get access to that community doesn't get access to you. So for us, it's really important for us to be where you are, where developers are. And developers are everywhere, and that's what we are doing with these Oracle Code events, going to the cities instead of building a huge Megatronic developer conference for everyone to get 10,000 developers. We really thought, we should be where developers are. So we went to Prague, we went to Beijing, we went to Bangalore, Tokyo, and we did that. And online, we are also doing that, bringing that content to where you guys are. So communication is key. That's important for us. That's important for you. That's important for the developer community. And to talk even more about communication, I'd like to welcome on stage from Slack, Buster.
Okay, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you, Buster.
Can I take your...
you can take the click.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
All
right. Hello, everyone. I'm Buster Benson. I'm the head of platform product at Slack, and I am here to talk about how we can build onto the Slack platform a little bit better. So to start, I would also like to just say that I am a developer myself, and I have a lot of empathy for building on the platforms, and we try to bring that sort of empathy to how we build our own platform. So to start, how many people are Slack enthusiasts or Slack developers yourselves here? Awesome, cool. So that means I can tell you all, the rest of you, exactly what Slack is. Slack is a messaging platform, and it's used mostly for internal communication within companies, but we're starting to sort of test the boundaries and help you also expand Slack communication to other companies with the recent launch of shared channels and internationalization. So we're a young company, especially compared to, say, Oracle, but we're growing quickly. And the interesting thing about Slack is that people, there's 50,000 paying customers out there and almost 2 million daily users. And these people are really connected to Slack on a timely basis, 10 hours a day on average. And so this creates an interface for you to create your tools to actually connect with people that are working and talking to each other. So I was asked, why do customers find Slack so useful, so valuable? And there's really two big reasons I want to call out. One of them is that at our foundation, we are really trying to bridge the human-to-human communication. So we don't like to say that we're a chat app, but at the very foundation, we do want to help people communicate to each other. And that means not only just talking to each other, the people that you know, but finding the right people to talk to. Sometimes you have a question for a group. Sometimes you have a question for someone that you don't even know if they're in the company or not. By doing this in small bite-sized pieces and not having to necessarily broadcast it all the time, we're not necessarily trying to kill meetings or kill email, but we're trying to take the value that you get out of those things and help you make faster, higher quality decisions. So it's taking the stuff that you normally have to do that are a little bit slower and making them faster. So building on this human communication layer, that's the foundation that the platform sits on. And we think of the platform as an operating system for work. So not only humans and humans communicating, but more and more, every company, especially larger companies, are using hundreds, if not thousands, of different kinds of software every day. And so how do you might be a person that uses the terminal or text editor or like a designed app or a ticketing system, and you might use that really deeply, and we're not trying to change that. What we're trying to do is take the other 997 products that your company uses and give those an interface that's light and usable and doesn't force you to go and click on a link and find a password and log in or request an account, that kind of stuff. So bringing all that context from all these tools into the conversation in a human-friendly way. So when you do this, not only does the context come in, but you can actually make quick contextual actions and decisions and sort of see eye to eye on a lot of things without having to leave the conversation. You don't have to say things like, I'll get back to you, or we can take this offline as much. And the end result is really to feel that you're on top of everything, that everything that's happening is stuff that you understand and it's all part of the conversation. So very quickly, we have a big developer community that's very thriving. The 155,000 or more developers, each one of these could be a team or a company in itself. We have 1,000 apps in the app directory, and we have a Slack fund that invests in companies that are doing really interesting things on our platform. But it's really sort of stepping into this larger external trend, which is that apps, and especially apps in conversations, are becoming indispensable for work. There will be a day when we won't be able to even imagine having to go out into every single individual tool and work with it individually. And so we're trying to sort of further that future that's coming. And so some of the hints that this is working, we do have 1,000 apps. If you go to slack.com/apps, if you haven't been there recently, we just passed 1,000. And almost, you'll be surprised at not only the variety and the sort of diversity of the kinds of tools that are there, but the quality is also getting better. Every single one of these groups of developers is sort of learning from each other oftentimes, and actually getting better over time. And the proof is in the fact that over 90% of the paid teams that are using Slack are using apps, and it's not just, it's not all Giphy. It's actually really work-related tools, although I do love Giphy. And each one of these apps has been reviewed and validated to be useful for work. So that's really the best of the best is in this directory. So we also launched Enterprise earlier this year, and we've been learning a lot about how Slack can scale not only performance-wise, but with the features and the product itself to work really well for larger customers. And what we're learning is that every single big company out there that's using Slack or using apps is special in a very specific way. They each have their own custom installations of software. They each have their own custom configurations, processes. All this stuff is very special, so we can't necessarily take things out of the box and make them work. But there are some things, and I'm going to go through them really quickly, is that some things that every company in every role, every person at the company wants to do better. So you might recognize some of these things very quickly. How many of you want to know about important things happening? A few of you, OK. I think it's sort of a thing that a lot of us want to do. So this can be not only like when something's breaking or something's on fire, but also just like, how's the business doing? How's this team doing? What's the status of this objective? So we can pull that information into Slack and let you know about the stuff that's happening in a timely manner. One step beyond that is we add some interactivity. So sometimes a notification is purely for your own informational benefit. Sometimes it requires some kind of step or an action. And you can put that action right in the notification itself. And this means that if you get this and you're walking to your bus or you're in between meetings, you can actually get things done without having to maybe potentially log in on your phone or figure out where to do it. We have all the context in Slack, and we can make those things happen quickly. Number 3, so lots of links get passed around, we've learned, is that because there are so many tools out there, we're always sharing links and trying to figure out how do we get this information over here and pass it on and link it to it over there. And so one of the things that's really hard to do on the web in general is pull information from behind the links, because they often require login. They're behind a firewall. There can be a lot of things, that's reasons why it's hard to find. But we recently launched a feature that lets the app sort of listen to certain domains. It could be internal or external, and pull that information into the conversation. So again, you don't have to have everyone click on the link and go see what it is. They can actually pull the most important stuff into the conversation and then continue and move on. So again, you can add some actionability to that as well to make that more interactive. One thing we just launched last week is dialogue. So we've talked a lot about bringing context into the conversation. We also realized that it's important to pass that context back out. So whatever the internal tools are that you're building, whatever the products and services that you're integrating with, sometimes it's important to get that comment or that sort of categorization or tag or assignee back out into the tool. And so we launched dialogues recently. And so this is going to make the two-way flow of context really seamless. So the one I'm most excited about is bots, obviously. And so there are a lot of bots out there, and they're really hard to make. But we're learning that there's a couple simple things you can do to make them a little bit easier to both build and use. One of them is just facilitate human connections. Donut's one of my favorites that I like to call out a lot. They just let you create a channel in Slack, and every couple of weeks they pair you up with someone to go get coffee or a donut. And the cool thing about this is that because it's in Slack, the bot also knows that who you talk to regularly, and it pairs you with someone that you don't talk to normally on your day-to-day basis. And it's a really interesting way to just take that information in a light way and use it for something to serendipitously meet more people at your company. So lastly, I want to pull it all together. So this is all feature stuff, but how do you actually make this a thing that makes your work life simpler? Here's an example. Jo is an engineer on the ops team. She's getting a notification from somewhere, possibly PagerDuty, that says, hey, there's a lot of errors coming through. She investigates a little bit and decides that this should be escalated to an incident. So she talks to ServerBot and says, let's start an incident. And ServerBot replies saying, oh, happy to help. OK, let's do this. Ask for a few details. We use dialogues to choose an incident commander, to get a brief summary of the incident, and to then that goes back out to the app, and you can do anything with that. You can create an issue, you can sort of notify the right people. You can also send the message back into the channel, timestamp it, and create a channel for the further discussion of this incident to continue. In there, you hop into this incident channel, and the bot knows, hey, whenever this kind of thing happens, let's pull in these 3 people that are part of the incident management crew. And also, here's a quick way to sort of might ping the channel every once in a while for status. This just keeps the normal stuff that you have to do every single time a little bit easier. And then eventually Jo decides, like, OK, yeah, this is definitely a problem. Here's the chart that actually displays the error rates spiking. And I'm going to link to it. It's posted to an internal dashboard, but ServerBot's listening for that URL and pulls in the chart directly. So you can continue the conversation. People don't have to fly around trying to dig up these things. So that's sort of showing how unfurls and notifications and dialogues and all that work together. And then after this incident wraps up, the bot could then summarize the channel back into the main channel and move on. And it's actually just making that process that we all do normally a little bit more human-friendly. All right, so key point is that there are people, and the reason I'm here is that there are people at every company that build these processes and tools that we all use, and if we go away, the company falls apart. So how do we make it easier to build these things? And really, it's our job at Slack to sort of give you that power to do that and to make things like design an interface, make things like connecting to the API really simple and easy to use and even pleasant. So I encourage you to, if you haven't, go check out api.slack.com. That's where all the documentation is. But also just think, there's 1,000 apps out there. Some of them are out-of-the-box solutions, but some of them are also customizable and configurable to tie things together in new ways. So they could both be the answer, and I encourage you to go look and try to find the simplest one that solves your problem. So thank you very much for having me here. It's great to be up here. It's good to see you all. So thanks.
Buster, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm using Slack. Oracle is using Slack. We have 30,000 developers using Slack. And the reason we use Slack is to communicate better. And the reason we do that is to build our cloud. And to talk about our cloud, I would like to welcome on stage Amit Zavery.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thanks. Hello, good afternoon. Hope you guys are having a good open world, JavaOne, and code event. We have an exciting session planned here today. What we wanted to do was give you an idea of how the life of a developer has changed, and what are the things we are doing at Oracle to make your life easier and use a lot of the latest technologies which are evolving in this space, right? So if you look at, I think it's a great and exciting time for developers for sure. There's the way we used to build applications before and how we build now is night and day, and it's much better as well. In terms of how you really build blended experiences done dynamically instead of having to do hard-coded elements. The dev life cycle and the time to deliver an app has reduced drastically. You're delivering a lot of new updates on a daily or hourly basis. We used to do long 12, 18-month release cycles, which no longer is the case anymore. The teams are very distributed, and every developer likes to bring their own stack, own technology stack, which they would like to use. So you have different preferences. Before, you used to have a very centralized team where all the engineering was all defined, very well structured, and you didn't have a choice of what you would use to build your application. Components are much smaller now, a lot of microservices-based architecture versus monolithic applications. Also, you're doing a lot of engaging interfaces now, which is using a lot of mobile applications, very innovative look and feel against it, as well as bots, which we'll share with you in terms of what's going on in that area as well, versus just building another app, which looks the same most of the time. And the API-first design. If you look at how the new generation is building applications, it's really thinking of APIs first in terms of how the interactions would be, instead of thinking about the functionality from the beginning. But with this, there are a lot of challenges as well, right? The new application development requires a lot of different things in the platform. One, you need to be able to support polyglot programming languages as well as microservices, which landed up scaling out. You want to have elastic scaling with that. You need to be able to have containerized application running in your platform and support the whole life cycle around the containers as well. You need to have really good DevOps processes, cloud-ready tools, which give you ability to build those applications easily. A lot of monitoring is required. If you have a distributed application, it's very hard to know where the bottlenecks are, where the issues are. So you really need smart performance monitoring, and then be able to deliver those applications very quickly as well. So for that, we've been working at Oracle for many years to build out a cloud platform. We'll share with you what we have today as well. But the key thing we have delivered is the ability for application developer to build applications and deploy that, be able to integrate and extend existing application, be able to publish a lot of content and engage users, be able to analyze and predict actions, and secure and manage your infrastructure, your platform, as well as applications as well. So this is an innovative platform with a comprehensive, open, and integrated and hybrid kind of offering, which is highly scalable, intelligent, secure, and we make it available globally as well. So instead of me kind of covering all the different aspects of it, what we decided was to give you guys a demo scenario, which will show you how easy it is to build some of this next generation application. We took an idea of buying a used car, which is probably the most financially right thing to do versus buying a leased or a new car. But it's very problematic as well. You don't know what the pricing should be. You don't have the vehicle history. So what we have decided is to really show you how easily you can create a chatbot application using a messaging-based service where you can take a picture of a car license plate, be able to send that back to a microservice in the back end using a lot of the APIs we provide, and get the data back with the history from services like Carfax, for example, and be able to send that information back to the user in a few seconds. Instead of having to get an app for a used car, which you probably never buy that often, we'll show you how quickly we can do this using some of the microservices and API. So we bring together the ability to design and develop APIs, be able to build and deploy those as a chatbots, and have microservices architecture underneath the covers, as well as security associated with that, so you make sure your application is secure as well. To showcase that, let me invite Jacob from our development team, who will give you a walkthrough about what we can do with the API design and development. Jacob. Welcome. Welcome, Jacob.
All right. How are you? Thanks, Amit.
Let's show them what you can do with the APIs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm a developer by background myself. About 5 years ago, I went to a hackathon, and over 48 hours, I've built a quick project for documenting and designing and testing and prototyping APIs. And then we kept building on it and building on it and building on it. And this year, we ended up acquired by Oracle. So when Amit wanted some APIs, he reached out to me and said, hey, Jacob, we should build some APIs together. And my developer nature, I would always, of course, say, let me just code it, and I'll be done next week, of course. But then I kind of remembered many, many times that I've done that before and how that can go wrong. And most of the things that go wrong is that I actually build an API that nobody wants to use because I didn't really stop and think why people need that API or what they need the API for. So one of the things that we've built at Apiary is a very quick solution for you to document an API up front and to get a mock server to prototype your API, to give that API to somebody to try to use it before you really go down the route of developing. And of course, eventually, you have a specific contract, you have a specific documentation for your API, you go and build it. But then, because you already have it documented, you don't have to reverse engineer it at the end and document it later. And it just serves as a very good foundation for the rest of the cycle when you're building APIs. So I wanted to show you a quick demo today, but before I do that, I want to quickly show you what the architecture looks like for our product at Oracle. So we have two different parts of what we call API platform today. a design engine called Apiary that came with the acquisition earlier this year that's typically used by API designers, developers like yourself that are thinking about building an API but just want some feedback first. It's kind of like README-driven development. Just write down what you're going to build and show it to somebody. And then once you have an API that's developed and you want to expose it out to the public, you might want to put a gateway in front of it and manage the security policies, for example. And so that's a different role for an API manager to go into our API platform management portal and really kind of configure all of the management policies that are in there. And of course, those two products work seamlessly together. And the most important thing that they configure are these gateways that allow the applications, well, actually, the gateways, one of the great things about them is you can put them in any cloud that you want to. You can put them into your own cloud. You can run them on-premise. You can run them on your own computer. And they periodically check with our management server for the current latest security policies and gateway policies for accessing your API. And then you can expose through those gateways API to your applications. You can take those gateways and put them into any environment, as discussed, into Oracle Cloud, other clouds. You can run it on-premise. So it's a really, really powerful and comprehensive solution. But it starts with API design. And I want to show you today how you can get an API out and done in 5 minutes. So our first live product demo, fingers crossed that it works. Let's switch to the computer. All right. That's not the screen. Perfect. So this is intro screen for Apiary. It's got over 300,000 developers already building APIs using Apiary. So I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that. All right. You guys are awesome. Perfect. For the rest of you, that was not paid, by the way. Thank you. For the rest of you, there's a free sign-up. So go ahead and sign up today. It's not a trial. It's not time limited. For developers, it's free. Once you have a really, really large company, you might want to pay for it. But for developers, it's free. So go ahead and check it out. Once you log into Apiary, you can very quickly use several different languages that you can pick to choose and describe an API. This one here is an API for the used cars that Amit talked about, that I've built for him. And it's really just a flavor of Markdown. It's really not all that complicated. It describes the resources, the parameters that are required or optional, the data that gets returned from the API. And I have a real-time documentation rendered on the right side. So the moment I make any changes, they just get reflected automatically. In fact, I get this documentation built out of the box just the moment I type up a couple commands in Markdown. And so I can take that and give that out to whoever's going to be building the client that is actually building the chatbot on top of the API for buying cars. So this is a documentation that not only describes how the API works, and I can click on a specific resource, for example here, and it specifically tells me, I know the code is really small here, but I have many different code examples in different languages on how to access the API. In fact, let me copy out this curl command here and try a bit of a live API call on stage. What could possibly go wrong? And there you go. I got a response right back from the mock server. I didn't actually write any API, obviously. I just documented it. But the documentation is already a prototype on its own. So that's a real HTTP API out there that you can call and get responses back. So that's great for me to give it out to another developer and tell them, is this what you want to use? Or do you have any feedback? And you know what's going to happen already. Of course, they're going to have feedback, right? So you're going to start making changes, and those changes are going to result in versions, and then maybe multiple different people are going to be overriding each other. So for that reason, we have an ability to take this documentation of the API or the specification and put it out on GitHub. So I actually have this file out on GitHub. And the moment I make a change here, I can make a change and push it out to GitHub, and it creates a new commit. Or I can create a new branch here, and I can say, hey, hello, Oracle code. And I just create a new branch. And maybe if the internet is merciful and I get a good Wi-Fi connection, I push it out to GitHub. And if I switch to my GitHub repo that's linked up, I can click on the drop-down menu, and I can see my new branch created just here. So there's a bidirectional sync. Whatever I do in my repo in GitHub gets synced up to Apiary. The documentation stays up to date. The mock server stays up to date. And it's a really, really powerful way to start prototyping an API very quickly. And once you're ready with the API, then you can continue, use the definition file to load it up into our gateway and use it to configure your policies. But that's for a later stage. One last thing that I'll show you here is a very nifty feature. Oftentimes, at least in many companies that I've been in, we've been fighting over what the API should look like. We've had many different teams building slightly different APIs, and there's all these standards and requirements about how the URLs should look like and how the data structures should look like. And so for that purpose, we've built an ability in Apiary for you to define how your API should look like. But they're not really kind of hard and harsh policies. They're just little kind of syntax highlights that you can see here that says, hey, look, I have a rule here that an ID in a JSON should usually be a UUID, and it shouldn't just be an integer. And so it automatically actually detected it here. I have a UUID over here at the top, and if I just copy it and paste it so that you can see that it'll go away, and I replace this integer with a UUID, boom, and the error validating should go away once I hit the save button. Or I had a live issue. There you go. OK, well, it should go away. But this is a really powerful way for you to start building APIs, even in larger companies and larger contexts. So that about concludes my demo. You can get started today. I'm sure you can get started with an API in 5 minutes, and we should probably switch back to the presentation now.
Thanks.
All right.
Jacob.
Thank you, Amit.
So tell us, this is very exciting. It's great to have the Apiary team and you at Oracle, and the work you guys are doing is very, very impressive. Tell us, what are you announcing at Open World and at the Code event today?
Absolutely.
About what are you doing for developers and how are you helping them going forward?
Absolutely. Over the last couple of years, we've built out Apiary to be the largest API design platform in the world, with over 300,000 developers. But today, we're announcing this kind of unified product between Apiary and API platform that covers not only prototyping and designing APIs, but also running them in production and securing them and deploying them. And so we will have this completely seamless solution across the full life cycle from the start to the end, all integrated in a way that makes you developers excited. So I'm very excited about that.
Great.
Thank you.
So the second part of the demo we wanted to show is how you build the microservices associated with what Jacob showed you in terms of the APIs. So let me invite Anand Kothari from the development team to walk us through some of those scenarios as well. Welcome, Anand.
Thank you. Good evening. So now we saw how the APIs were designed. The next step is to obviously implement them. And I'll talk about the capabilities we have in our Oracle Cloud ecosystem to help you implement and manage these APIs. So first thing to do for any kind of microservices development or any kind of development is to make sure you have a development lifecycle with built-in CI/CD tooling. That's what exactly we have in our ecosystem, a complete and comprehensive development tool that brings in the CI/CD, the continuous integration and delivery of these kind of applications. You can do agile development right in that tool, build your sprints, manage them, etc. You can do team collaboration. It has source code management, and you can do peer reviews and collaborate around those source code. You can use our built-in tools as well as our integration with Slack. It supports all kinds of languages and not just building applications on different languages. If you're using cloud services, it's a single tool that will allow you to do application development and delivery onto all our PaaS services. Well, once you develop those applications in this environment, you need to run them somewhere. You need to deploy them. So that's the next capability. You would take these applications and deploy into our microservices into our polyglot runtime. What it is, it's an automated system. It does container management for you, and it provides you an elastic and highly available container runtime. It takes your code. Essentially, you just push your code into it, and it'll run it into this automated, fully managed container management solution. It is designed for running lightweight, modern 12-factor style applications. Supports all kinds of languages, and you don't have to worry about this of any kind of container management. Just push the code. We'll do the rest. You can bring in your own containers. Enough said. I'll show you how these two ecosystems comes together on this demo. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm in the right place, and we are not timed out. We're going to run. This is our developer service. I am in the chatbot project. For this project, we had to build those 5 microservices Jacob just talked about. On the front page, you're seeing all the project activities that are going on in this project. Each of these microservices are a different Git repo. there is a built-in source control, and it's backed by Git. I'm going to jump onto one of them. This microservice was built in Java. I can easily go and browse any code, make some edits, push it in, and it will trigger the build. After that, I can also do our agile process management right inside this developer tool. I have a little sprint for these 2 weeks of October. One still a task in progress. Once completed, I can create new tasks, assign it to developers. They can make changes, and when they push their code into the source code repository, it's going to automatically associate that change with the issue. Finally, when the code is ready to be checked in, you want to build that code. So there is a continuous build ecosystem within this developer service. I have 5 different builds for the 5 microservices. Let me get into one of them. If I go into this vehicle history one, you will see all the historical builds that have happened. You will see the output of the builds, the target artifacts. These are the artifacts that you would take and push it into the app container or the polyglot environment. You can easily configure your builds here, define your triggers, define your build steps, and once the code is checked in, you can, I could do a build now, but essentially that's not what you would do. You would check in the code, and that would automatically trigger off the build, and when the build is done, you want to automatically deploy it. So for that, very simple, go to the deployment console and create a configuration that essentially gets triggered off of a complete build. In this case, I have 5 already created, and they target that build artifact onto our polyglot platform. So I'm going to jump onto that platform right from here, and it'll take me to the application container. This is where all these applications, all these different microservices are running. As you can see, there are a couple of Node and 3 Java-based microservices. Easy get into one of them, and you'll see that it's running a couple of instances. Each one is 1 gig memory. You'll get health information right off of the main screen, the overview page. If this service, and in this case it does, if a service need a backing service like a database, you can easily bind your application onto a backend service. In this case, I have bound it to a database cloud service. You can bind to anything, and the platform will take care of associating them, securing them, making sure that those 2 services can talk to each other. You don't have to worry about it as a developer. Finally, updates are pushed. This application happened to be built on Java 8. We've released Java 9. Automatically, there is a notification that there is Java 9. Would you like to update? We'll click on an update, and it'll do a rolling update for you so that you don't have any downtime. So 0 downtime updates. Now, you would do all of this typically as a developer on using CLI, using REST API, using different DevOps tools. I'm just showing in the UI, but everything that I did here is available for you to do it from your command line. So you never have to go to this console. So with that, I just showed you the two capabilities. One to develop your application, and then the other one where you would push that code and run it in that app container environment. We can jump back to the slides. And I will talk about another initiative that we have been enhancing here. So we have seen a trend around containers and Kubernetes. I saw a lot of hands go up when Bruno talked about how many of you do Docker or container-centric development. We are super excited because we are announcing a set of capabilities specifically around container-centric development. For that, it's very much similar to what I showed. The first thing you need is a CI/CD platform that is container-centric. For that, we acquired a company called Worker, which specializes in doing container development, gives you a pipeline to take your code, create your containers, and deploy it into a Kubernetes environment. Well, the next step is to give you a managed Kubernetes. This is based off the CNCF. We are part of that foundation. We are actively working on different projects within that foundation. And the platform will give you an easy way to set up and manage these Kubernetes cluster, and monitor them through components like Prometheus or even our Oracle Management Cloud. This runs on our cloud infrastructure. Finally, on top of that, an experience to build microservices and functions in a container-centric manner. right? You must have heard about the announcement we made in JavaOne where we open sourced the function, fnproject.io. This is essentially where we have open sourced our functions framework. If you haven't checked out, I encourage you to check out all of that into one single container application development platform for developers. Thanks,
Anand. I think, as you mentioned, there are a lot of new things we're doing on the runtime area. And as you saw from the demo, you get an idea of how extensive the platform is. So one important part of the platform, of course, is around how to make sure everything is secured. I mean, you hear about all these cybersecurity threats and breaches. And to kind of show you how our platform kind of builds in security inherently instead of kind of bolting it on, I'll have Arun walk us through some of those elements. Welcome, Arun. Thanks.
Good afternoon. So, as you are building these applications in the cloud, you can no longer bolt on security to the infrastructure. Most of the cases, you don't even own the infrastructure anymore. So the challenge is, as a developer, how can you provide security integrated in the app itself so that your CFO, whose credentials got pawned, does not log in from Ukraine? So how do you do that? So I'm going to talk about two products that we have, the Identity Cloud Service and the Oracle CASB Cloud Service, the Cloud Access Security Broker. The Identity Cloud Service acts as the federation for authentication and authorization, and the CASB service monitors the risk attribute of users and entities that the users of for the users of your application. So in this case, a bad or malicious actor tries to log into your APIs. The API sends the federation SSO request to IDCS. IDCS asks CASB, hey, this is the user logging in from this IP address. What is the risk, the threat score for this user? CASB responds with that I see a very high risk because the IP address is suspicious, and I have looked up, I have an Intel feed from the dark web, and I can see that this credential has been hacked. So it gives a very high risk score, and IDCS can either step up authentication at that time or deny access at that time. So it can do a multi-factor authentication or deny access to the user at that time. So this prevents malicious access for your application rather than you having to redeploy the application with rotated credentials and doing downtime for your application. So let me show you the console of this application, how it works. So this is our console in which we have 3 cloud applications that we are looking at. You have a map view of what all these applications are, some of the key security indicators and the threats in live feed of your applications of various data points. This is some of the risk events. Now here, this API app I'm looking at, and I'm seeing some brute force attack going on this API app. I can drill down in this one and see more details about the threat. And what I see is that there are multiple times people have tried to log into this application, and they have failed, right? This is more than normal, and this has happened in past couple of days, and this is for a particular user. I go into the details of the user, and I see a very high user risk score because the number of login events that I see for this user are exceptionally high. Normally, this user logs in 10 times. This time, it's trying to log in 500 times. Although there were 75 failed events, the other events kind of show that the user got in. Some malicious user got in. Similarly, the other APIs are called order of magnitude times higher than they are called normally. In addition, if you go and look at the details, you see that the user is logging in from all over the world. The attempts, the events that we are tracking are coming from all over the world. So combine that data with the number of login events, the anomalous activity that we are seeing in this for this user means that this account has been compromised. Right? In this case, most of these security admins will shut down the access, rebuild the whole application, rotate the credentials, and make it live again. In our case, you can just suspend the user directly from here. We will coordinate with IDCS and suspend the user here. So this provides the framework for doing that automation of preventing malicious users from accessing your cloud applications. You can also automate this. I'm showing you in our console. You can run this completely headless using APIs and orchestrating this whole workflow using APIs and writing your own scripts for that. We have APIs for getting risk score. We have APIs for federating identities. We have APIs for preventing action to step up authentication or deny authentication actions for various users. So that was a short demo of this.
So Arun, just be good for everybody to understand, what are you guys also doing in the cloud security? What did you announce this week?
So we are coming out with an SDK which will allow drop of various SDKs in Node, Python, and Java. So you can use that with few lines of code. You can integrate any identity store. You can integrate any identity store, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, or social identities, and integrate it in your application with a few lines of code. On CASB, we announced our APIs to pull these risk scores from CASB for in real time how users are while they're accessing the application, and protection for various cloud services that already exists in CASB.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Amit.
So now that we have built all this infrastructure for it and the platform, the next thing I wanted to show, the last part of the demo, was to kind of really create a chat bot with this. So Suhas will show us how easy it is to build a chat bot.
Thanks, Amit. I'm actually going to skip slides, so can you just get back to my laptop? When people are bored of seeing slides. So you guys saw, Jacob come and mock up an API. You saw Anand come and develop an API and build a microservice, and Arun here just secured it. So let's look at the exciting stuff that people actually interact with all the services that are built. So I want to take my demo in two parts. First, I'm actually going to demo interacting, and so the whole aspect of what I'll show you here is a conversational UI or interacting with a bot. So here I have printed this bot, and I'm using Facebook Messenger to start with this. So I'm going to tell hello to the bot and say hi. And my network is up. Yes, it is up. Great. So it says, just to make sure that it knows that I'm talking to a bot, it says, I'm a bot. And you can get information about any used car or any information you have about this car. So I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to upload an image. So it asked me to upload an image. So I'll click on the image. Usually we would have a car here, but we couldn't get the car here. So I'm just going to pick some images from my standard stuff and hit send. Now what's happening in the background here is that we have our AI component that's actually processing this image and integrating with all the APIs that were built and the microservices that were built before. And it did figure out that this is a Tesla Model S, and here's the information, the reading, etc. So again, getting information from the backend systems. And asked me if I'd like to see more about the car history. I say yes. And connect. There we go. And it sort of gives me some more information: one owner, one recall, etc. No accident history. So that's good. And it asks me if I'm interested in purchasing this car, and if I wanted to hear the price recommendation. Now, as part of our AI engine, I'll talk about the internals in a minute, we also provide a recommendation engine, so you can basically connect that and program that to send other kinds of recommendations or information to the end user. So it basically says, well, the recommended price here is $64K, and so on and so forth. And also that based on my zip code and my location, it identified that there are similar cars in that area, and if I wanted to see any. And I'm going to say yes, and hopefully it'll connect, and there we go. So it's basically gone and got some new cars from there. So here's the Obi-Wan car, some more P90s, and a blue Sedan S, and a red Tesla model, right? So this was, again, just to give you an idea of what a conversational interaction is with a bot. Again, this is using machine learning in the back end. And again, when you look at sort of occasional uses of apps, there's no need to now download an app and keep it maintained. Here's something I can use with interfaces that I'm used to. In this case, I use Facebook Messenger, but I could have done the same thing with Skype or WeChat or WhatsApp or Line, Telegram, or even integrated with Amazon Dot Echo. Not that you could see pictures on that, but you could still interact with any of the voice channels and so on and so forth. All right, now that you've seen what a conversational UI looks like, let me just jump into what it takes to build one of these. So if I can get to my builder here, and I'll make it a little bit larger so you can see it. So what we have, I'll go back to sort of the main screen here and increase that font here. So this is sort of the bot builder that's part of the Oracle Cloud Platform. And there are really sort of three major components of what we do, or three major parts to building a bot. The first part is where I configure and train the machine learning models to understand how to interact with the user. So it's what we call the management of the NLU engine. The second part is designing the dialogue. So the back and forth that I had with the bot is basically what we call the conversational designer, or the design aspects of the dialogue. The third part is the integration. And integration has two components to it. One is the component of integrating to the front end, i.e. the channels that I would be integrating with. In this case, I use Facebook Messenger, but I could use any one of the other ones I mentioned earlier. And integrating to the back end, in other words, consuming the services that my team built earlier on. So I'm going to select the used car purchase. This is sort of the bot, and I'll increase the font again here. And so the first thing we do in defining, the great thing about our platform here is that I don't need petabytes, megabytes, kilobytes of data for my model to get trained. Okay? The way it works is that I can just get very quickly started by defining what I call an intent. And an intent is essentially defining what the user is asking and categorizing them into a bucket so I can actually take action on that. So here is a very simple bot. We have just two intents, one where someone says hello to the bot, greeting, and I come and I just start with some very sample phrases, hello, hi, and that's good enough for the bot to know that someone says hi, hello, or howdy. It'll know how to interact with it and provide a greeting. When I look at fetch number plate, for license number, again, we just started with about 5 utterances, what we call it, of sample phrases, which is good enough for the models to be trained. And we have multiple models that automatically pick what's the best way to train the model. There's a linguistic model, there's a neural net deep learning model that uses a combination of neural nets and spectral word embedding to figure out how to associate and how to determine what the user is asking. And I can test this all in real time. So we have a built-in component where I can test the bot, which is the interactions. I was testing this before to make sure I was connected. But I can also test. So the first thing I do is test how the NLU engine is working. So for example, I can come and say, I have a license, right? And it'll determine that this is the fetch license type intent. Now, of course, granted, there's only 2 intents here. But if I had 15, 20 intents, it will figure out and give this ranking, this probability that you see on the screen. As well as for developers, we go into deep details. You can see a full JSON payload of exactly what words were uttered by the user, how the NLU engine interpreted it, how did it break it down, and what probability it gave. And if for any reason this was incorrect, we can literally just go select this other radio button, hit train, and the model begins to train itself again. So very real time, very agile, and you can just do this constantly, right? So that's one part of what we call setting the NLU engine. The second part is what we call entity extraction. So when I go in and say, I want to buy a car, or I want to buy a Tesla, then it automatically recognizes that Tesla is of a type car, right? Or I want to buy a car tomorrow. It identifies that it can take information that you've input as a user and automatically extract this thing as a date and time concept. Why is this important? Because at the end of the day, I have to take all this information I get from the user, process it, and then create a payload that I can now send back to the API layer to perform an action, right? So the entities essentially are, think about this as data types, and there are either system-generated entities that are already processed by the NLU engine. So things like address, currency, date, they're automatically pre-programmed. So if the user says, can you deliver the car to this address, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever lane, it'll automatically recognize that. So as a developer, I don't need to sit there and code all of that, extract that from my payload, and say, oh, this is of type address, so let's map this to a GPS coordinate or whatever it is. It's automatically taken care of by the NLU engine. So that was the sort of how we train the machine learning aspects of the bot. The next part is the bot builder. In this current version that's available today, we use a scripting language that's a YAML-based format. And we provide you all the variables on how you define. Essentially what we're building is a very simple state engine, but a very powerful state engine where you can determine sort of this dialogue with the end user and have that pre-integrated with the NLU engine. And this is sort of where you maintain the state and context of the dialogue, right? So I'm not going to go through this in more detail, and we can have another session, if you like, on how to define this dialogue. But this is going to get more and more advanced as we continue to build on this. So the next component here is the integration to the systems of record. So essentially, what we do is we have these what we call custom components. These are Node.js or JavaScript applications or components or microservices that run in either a Node container or our application cloud container. And it's essentially hooking into the microservices that the team built earlier, right? So when we designed and we deployed the microservices, we essentially use these custom components to basically go and grab it. It could be a microservice, it could be a function call. It's up to you how you design this. The final part to the bot builder is configuring the channels. So again, we wanted to make it very simple for you to integrate with all these different channels. Now, let me tell you, you can do this with webhooks. It's pretty straightforward. But there's a lot of heavy lifting that happens in actually integrating this natively to the channel, because each channel has a different way on how the menu structures work, the carousels look and feel. So the look and feel, the UX that you saw, was a very sort of Facebook-led UX, right? But if I run this in Skype, I run this in WeChat, WhatsApp, it's going to look very different. And with the plethora of different channels we have, it's a lot of work to do. So we actually take care of this. So we literally just go and add a channel. So you see here I've got Facebook, and you basically get a couple of information from Facebook, like the page access token or the app secret, and we provide a couple of our own token and a web URL. You put that into your developer.facebook.com page, and bingo, you're now connected with Facebook. You don't have to worry about all the error messaging, handling. All that happens in the background as part of the bot. Okay? So Amit, you want to come back in? That was the end of the bot builder. So that hopefully gave you an idea of what a conversational interaction looks like and what the bot builder does to build these applications.
Thank you, Suhas. That was good. So we also made a lot of announcements around conversational AI in the platform.
Yeah, we're really excited. So two big announcements. One is we announced the conversational AI platform. So it gives you access to all the channels that we talked about.
Yep.
Also, we've gone deeper into the AI services. So here you saw a little bit of the natural language processing, a little bit of image processing, but we continue to add a lot of depth into the AI. The third thing is we also announced a partnership with Chatbox for building instant apps.
Yep.
And this is very important because as we look at user experiences, the chatbot is really good for an unstructured conversational interface. But when you want to collect or display a lot of information, you want some sort of a structured information. You don't want to go out and have a mobile app. This allows us to marry those experiences to give the user a very delightful and pleasant experience.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think one more thing. I think let me invite Buster from Slack back here.
Absolutely.
I mean, given that he talked about what Slack is doing for enterprises, it'd be good to hear from him how we can integrate Slack into bots. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So tell us, I guess, what are the exciting things you guys are doing first in Slack in the enterprises, and how you see the chatbot and the Slack bot working?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things we've learned from larger companies is that it's the internal integrations and the customized stuff that really gets everyone excited, and it's really balancing thoughtfully the customization possibilities and the flexibility, but also keeping it simple. And I think what we're just seeing here is really taking the heavy lifting for, who wants to build that really hard, natural language processing system. They actually just want to build the interaction, and that's where I see a huge amount of value.
And how are you working with Oracle? I mean, how is the things evolving there?
Yeah, so we're really excited to have you as a customer, obviously, and we're gonna learn a lot from just working with you and building into this bot framework. I believe that there's already apps and bots springing up since the announcement here, so excited to see what happens.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
So you want to show how we can build this integration into Slack?
Sure, Amit. If we can go back to the podium screen. So my team, Anush and Emilio, sort of behind my back, literally. We're building some Slack bot, and just this morning they were going back. So here's what you see on the screen is our internal Slack channel, and they're sort of going back and forth. And I got notified saying, hey, Suhas, I don't know if you're in customer meetings, but we've actually built a bot for you. And I kid you not, this was done at 2:36 p.m. this afternoon. So what you're going to see here is me doing this demo for the first time. So if it doesn't work, Anush is sitting here, you can blame him. So let's start with, I'm going to ask the Aria bot. No, oops. Again, here. I'm supposed to be typing here. So I'm going to ask the Aria bot to sort of see if I can see my profile. So let me give you a little bit of background. Aria is our internal employee-facing directory, right? So if I want to see Amit's background, or I want to locate Amit on the company directory or whoever else, I go to Aria and I look for it. So now, the beauty about this is, as I'm collaborating with my team, I don't have to go anywhere else if I want to quickly connect to my developer or connect to my manager, or I want to call Amit. I can literally come here and say, add Aria bot, my profile. All right, and this is connected and it works.
And this is through Slack, right?
This is through Slack. Oh, wow. Wow, they have a photo of me, too. Cool. So this is absolutely live. So this shows me sort of my information from the Aria bot. And interesting enough that they've taken the phone number out so you guys don't have it and call me. I'll leave you with Anusha's number. So. Or if I wanted to find other people in my directory, I can go to the Aria bot and say, let's say, search for Amit. Let's see what Amit looks like. He always looks handsome. So let's look for Amit. Okay, what he found was a lot of Amit Z's. So here we've integrated with the menu structure. So where we Amit Zavery, there we go. And thinking, there we go. I'm sure you agree with me. This is a great photo of Amit. We don't have your number either, Amit. But, right? So this is all done in about half an hour. Now, I have one more thing, and I'm taking a little bit of time here, but I really did want to show this. So we had a hackathon yesterday, and our partner Fishbowl Solutions and Aura Player, they built this bot in about 45 minutes. And this bot, using the platform that we just showed you, was integrated to Oracle Sales Cloud and Oracle EBS, or EBS, or e-business systems. And this is about ordering, so as a salesperson, now first of all, when I got this bot, I didn't know what to do with it. So of course, like everything else, I do this, help. And actually it's a good thing, because it does tell me what to do with this bot. So I go to the bot, for EBS, it tells me I can do all this, I can ask different questions. So as a salesperson, so imagine that now, you're just using this to collaborate with your colleagues. I can come here and say, price for AS, oops, you can type it, AS 54888. Great. Now this is going live to the Oracle Sales Cloud. Hopefully I'm connected. There we go. So it says the price for the unit is $1,599. And I say I want to, okay, that's good enough, so pretty cheap. So let's order this part, order part AS 54888. Okay, so now here's sort of where the dialogue comes in, right? So I've asked to order part. How many units would you like to order? I'd say 5. And it then says, and now this is connected to, now this is going to the actual ERP warehouse or our EBS system. So I'll pick up from Seattle. And where do I want to send this to? So I'll ship this to Oracle. And do I really want to do this? Yeah, I really want to do this. The order is processed. Right?
Wow.
And this was built in less than 45 minutes. So a shout out to Fishbowl Solutions and Aura Player for doing this. So thank you.
Very impressive.
Right.
Good job, man. Very nice. You want to show up the book?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One last thing. So if you want to do mobile development,
there you
our
go.
team has built or released this book, and our author is here, J.D. Thomas. So you can go and get one.
Thank you, Suhas. Don't leave yet, Suhas. Don't leave yet.
Don't leave yet.
Because you showed too many bots. Now we have a robot.
Yeah, we have a robot.
So this is Pepper. She was at the developer lounge. Who's seen Pepper at the developer lounge? All right, cool. So we used Suha's chatbot platform on the back end behind Pepper, the back end behind. And we implemented the same used car use case, right? You said you can have one bot in multiple channels, and that's what we did here. So Pepper is actually one channel configured with the chatbot platform. Oh, you looking at me? Okay. So the question is, Pepper what is the average price of a Ford Focus 2015?
Ford Focus 2015 is about $20,000.
Okay, is that a...
That's all right.
Yeah? Is that a good deal, Pepper?
That is a bit below the price. Depending on the car history, it may be a good deal. Good luck.
Good luck. I love that part. All right, thank you, Pepper. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bruno. Thank you so much. Cool. So I just want to quickly give you an idea of a few other things we have announced and been working on. I don't know how many of you guys are using blockchain or planning to use blockchain. Anybody? A few hands. All right. So we announced a blockchain cloud service this week as well, a fully managed offering where we manage the whole Hyperledger Fabric implementation. And we build a lot of the enterprise integration as well as the ability to have a scalable and secure system as well. A few other things around our big data platform enhancements as well. So we're adding a lot of capabilities around data catalog and be able to move and run things around on Spark and Hadoop clusters. We added a service for Kafka. And we're announcing also an offering for Cassandra managed service, NoSQL service as well. So if you want to use NoSQL, you want to use Cassandra, it will run on a public cloud, fully managed by Oracle as well. Right. So overall, the whole app dev platform has really been enhanced considerably. And if you see some of the things as you saw today, as well as other areas, if you want to go and see the demos, you'll see things around whole DevOps platform, container native and cloud native development capabilities. You saw some of the mobile and chatbot capability as well, APIs. And the other thing we are doing as well, which is probably more geared towards analysts and line of business developers. If you don't want to write any code, we have a lot of visual design-based tools as well. So you can drag and drop and create mobile apps, create chatbot apps as well. So a lot of innovations in that area as we move forward. There are a lot of other services available in the platform as well. Things, as I mentioned, around blockchain. We have around integration. So if you want to integrate a lot of ERP systems on-premise to a lot of applications that are running in the cloud. Same thing with data movement across heterogeneous systems as well. And hybrid capabilities as well. If you have some systems running on-prem, some systems running in the cloud, we provide a lot of services which can run in a hybrid mode as well. So we are very excited in terms of where we are as an offering. A lot of momentum today. We have 14,000 plus customers who use our platform, 3,000 plus partners with applications running on our marketplace. We've been growing very fast, $1.4 billion revenue for our platform last year, growing at 60% year over year. And the other thing we are very proud of is the validation we're getting from analysts like Gartner and Forrester in terms of the categories and leadership we provide in the PaaS area as well. If you want to try this out, we have a $300 free credit. You can go to cloud.oracle.com/tryit and get an account instantly and start using any of the services and see how well you can build applications on it. So hope you have a great rest of the week, and thank you all for attending. Hi, Stephen. Thanks.
So you've seen a lot about the Oracle services, chatbots, DevOps, microcontainers, and I'm very pleased to announce that we have all the way from Belgium, the founder of the DevOps movement, Patrick Debois from Zender TV. He's the CEO of Zender TV. Patrick? Hey, thanks for coming all the way out here for this.
Thanks for having me. Right. Here's my slides. Okay. So, no product announcements from me. Okay, I have 95 slides, so I'm going to pick up the pace. From serverless to serviceful. Okay. There's a lot of things I did. Most people might know me from starting with the word DevOps and making it a thing around the world. I do a lot of conferences, and whenever I see a new thing, I just start to get people together. So that's what I'm most proud of. Currently, I'm working in a startup, and we basically do a white label version similar to Facebook Live and Periscope for people who cannot go on the socials. So hit me up if you want to talk about that, but that's about it for me. Okay, small startup, 7 people. And we're running things. How do we do that? Easy. We use services. Backend services, community services, IT support services. So you're starting to see a pattern. Office services, front-end services. So it's hardly that we do anything ourselves, but still, we do. Mobile services? Yes, I am. So we figured that using all those services is probably smarter than building these things ourselves. It's a principle we follow in our company because we want to focus on our function in our domain. We're not the only ones doing it. Even the big companies are doing it. Like Snapchat is using Google, PubNub and Woza, Periscope. So it's not something as only a startup would do. Like even the big boys would do that. Okay. This brings me to the difference between serverless and serviceful, which I mentioned. I think the fact that we're using so many different services is, for me, the essence of serverless. Some would argue it's about the hardware not running on servers, but it's actually using, and the keyword there is third parties or vendors to do parts of your work, and they're more efficient or better to do so. So about 2 years back, we started using serverless stuff. So who's familiar with serverless? Raise your hand. Okay. For those who aren't, it's basically the next step from virtual machines, containers, and now you only deploy functions, one function at a time on your service. So there's a couple of them. I heard that Oracle released their own now, so I should have added that, but I was too late for the slides. Okay, so we use all those services, but it hasn't been always that easy for us. First time we used Lambda, we said, okay, it's great, and we built a meme generator for one of our customers, and when it got up into production, we got errors about disk full. Like, what? I'm running Lambda functions, I'm getting errors like disk full. So apparently the disk gets reused, and there's a limit, which is obviously in the documentation, but something we hit. Then there's the other thing. We fought so hard about getting very fast performance, and then we looked at part of the API on the serverless, and there were these cold starts, because underneath it's still a machine, and it has to start up, and if it's idle for a while, it takes some time. So there's a delay. The other thing we noticed that, so we're updating our versions of functions, but sometimes the old version would be stuck, and we would still see the API responding with older versions, even though it was all deployed. But the swap from the old version to the new version only happened when the container was kind of becoming idle. So under full stress, we had the issue that the swap didn't happen to the new version. There's a lot of pain points in serverless, and when you look at the topics, it's monitoring, debugging, testing, latency, deployment, and so on, which is funny because it should have taken all that pain away. And when you ask people in serverless, what's your problem? It's all those ops topics that they want to make you go away, but you hit them again. And, I could say it's the problem with serverless, but in reality, it's any service we use. Who's get some time or coffee taken while GitHub was down? Me? Okay, only a few. NPM, whether it's Maven or whatever is down, it doesn't really matter. You get coffee, you hit the limit, and you feel like, oh well, I'm responsible and I'm not responsible. I can't do anything about it, but we got blocked for our email because Amazon. It's really annoying. We learned the hard way that for the type of live events we do, the load balancer couldn't scale fast enough, so we have to kind of ask Amazon to pre-warm the service. So all these things you just learn by using the services. They don't really tell you that up front. So it's kind of like a discovery cycle you go through. And if it's really bad, it happens. Sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not okay. Those are the worst issues, because you really can't do anything about it. And you have to really wait for the supplier of your services to fix things in order. So, yes, we don't have the maintenance of running all the software and all the things behind it, but in reality, what we're actually doing is increasing the risk of availability. Does that resonate with you? Who uses a lot of external services? Raise your hand. Okay, a few. All the others are still building it themselves. Congratulations. I hope you move as fast as your competitor and you can keep up with the pace. So all this reasoning about these dependencies reminded me of promise theory, championed a lot by my friend Mark Burgers. And I'm going to explain a little bit of the principles and see how that gets you about your reason about external services. So in the ecosystem that you're working in, you are what they call an agent. Okay, yeah, I need to click faster. So, and you make promises to others in the system. So whatever service you provide, it's a promise. Don't mistake promise with like a hard SLA. So things can go down. I'll get to that later. It's a promise. Okay, somebody should be able to check your service, like maybe have a status page, whether you're up, whether it works or not. Basically, verifiable. So a promise doesn't guarantee the outcome. It's only a promise. I'll do my best. It's my intent to keep up the service. There's no way in hell I can guarantee 100% uptime, no matter who tells you that they want that. It's always a guarantee. That's the difference between the old way of thinking. Nothing can go down, so we build the ultimate cluster of whatever. No. The new reasoning is things go down, and we need to get better at dealing with that stuff. So there's an important difference, a promise and not a guarantee. Of course, there can be conditions. Like if I put the load on the system, I can say, well, you know, this is the load I can handle. Beyond that load, you're on your own. So I will put in conditions on the promise I give to agents in my ecosystem. And when I do so, I want to have that documented. Like Amazon documented the disk space issue, which I should have read, but I found out later. But the promise was that it's that amount of disk space, this is the number of limits you have, clearly stated as a promise. The language of the promise must be shared. I don't know if you've used a lot of Amazon services, but they typically are very API-centric, but not very human-friendly in their API. So there's always like a layer of translation between it to make it really usable. Although all the APIs are there, but it always needs kind of like a translation to make it easier to work with. And you need to agree on the promise you make. Like, it has to be with consent. I cannot overload the system and I say, you didn't keep your promise. No, this is how we deal with each other in the ecosystem. So, of course, an agent depends on other agents, and they have to keep their promise, but still, you have to realize it's a promise. It's not a guaranteed thing. They make the promise to you as well. And of course, they need to be verifiable, documented, and mutually agreed. It sounds like a basic thing, but in many cases, it's hard to verify, it's hard to not document it, and it might not be guaranteed. You're just going to hammer the system and say, well, it's not working. Yeah, but we never agreed that this was the load you're going to put there. It was never completely documented that you're going to use this API call, all that stuff. So you cannot make promises on behalf of the other agents. You can only make the promise on your own part. So if you would make a promise on behalf of the others, it's beyond your control. It's something in promise theory that doesn't work that way. And sometimes those promises can be conflicting. Let's say I'm using Node.js. Okay, sorry, it's the Java conference. I'm using Java. And Amazon has certain versions that it runs on the serverless. And I really want to have a new version. And they can pull the old version. So in their interest for maintenance, they're just going to pull the old version. But you need the new version. So you will have a conflict like, hey, but you were running and providing the service, and we're going to switch the version. So this type of conflicts, you just have to assume in the system. But the conflict cannot be exposed from your service. It's probably inside your own services that you use, but you have to deal with it. So it's not something you should just expose to the outside world. And so what's important to keep a promise is that you have the notion of choice. Because if I don't have a choice, how am I going to keep my promise? If one of the agents in the system fails, I cannot guarantee, or I'm not guaranteeing, but it's very hard to keep my promise. And sometimes those services get into a bigger agent. Let's say a cloud vendor, a service vendor. They say, well, all the similar things get grouped. But the agent then becomes the new single point of failure. Like, what if Amazon's down? What if Lambda is down? What if Azure is down? It's still a new single point of failure. So we thought we handled it by not having to deal with redundant hard drives. Now we have to deal with redundant clouds. So we're back to square one, but it's the same principle. You ultimately need the choice to go from 8 to 1 to avoid the single point of failure that you're using in the services. Because they will never go down, those services. Something that will never happen. So one of the jobs you have by using all those services is that you eliminate the single point of failures. In serverless, that could be like, okay, we could use Azure, Google Functions or whatever and switch between those, but you can also run it yourself. There's nothing like, it's a valid approach of dealing with the single point of failure. OpenFiles is like a Docker solution for running the functions. You can run it on your Kubernetes. Right? You could just run it on premise. It doesn't have to be in the cloud. It's having the alternative, having the choice. So to keep your promise, you can just switch between the different systems. That's when you're using services. That's the way you reason about dealing with all the agents in your ecosystem. serverless framework is one important aspect. They're trying to be provider agnostic. Why? To keep that choice. So these are just a few examples on how you would deal with that. These are specific serverless examples, but it doesn't really matter. It could be for your CDN, it could be for your transcoding, it could be for anything that you're using as a service. Like, what if your Google Docs go down? How would that hurt you? Do you have a backup or not? So all these kind of things is like, they're beyond your control, but you're ultimately responsible for your promise, so you have to deal with all these different systems. Sometimes they give you an alternative worldview, those agents, saying like, this is API version 1, 2, 3. That's how they shift by being able to move faster and faster for different versions. And the other thing to consider, if you're using a super agent, so a cluster of a lot of different services, the bigger the agent gets, often the slower it gets as well for change. So there's definitely like a case to be made for smaller players and the big players, like the supermarket on the corner and the big supermarket. It's like being able to switch feature from one to the other and have the steady pace as well. Because it's really hard when you scale your system to keep your promise. Like the promise of the performance that I mentioned, like the API requests. Like, imagine, okay, I could probably guarantee performance across 20 nodes, but what if I scale that to hundreds and hundreds of nodes that have to go all the time? The problem just gets bigger and bigger. And in promise theory, what they say is that like a promise that you make is actually build a relationship. And I think that's one of the key things they say, is building a relationship. I'll come back to that later. So up until now, we talked a little bit of theory, promise theory. We talked about the different serverless things. And so I argued really hard over all these years to get dev and ops to work together in the same room and so on. But the problem with all these external services is that I cannot sit down with, these services because they're somewhere else. They're beyond my control. They might have different approaches to the world. They might have a different roadmap. I cannot control that. So that's what's kind of my aha moment in there. So how am I going to solve that? So sure, we put some technology on there, and that makes it a lot easier, but I don't think that's really the answer there. In a poll I did on Twitter, I asked, like, what's the hard part? And surprise, surprise, it wasn't the technology. It was the people that we needed to take care of. And that one was interesting in why not serverless. He said, like, you can hug servers. No, you can hug people, right? Even though, we all had our moments with the bad names for all the servers and so on. I hope we were past that, but, it's the human touch that we're looking for in this. I know it's really hard at a conference where it's all tools and, chatbots and communication, but I never heard about the real communication between the real people. Kind of makes it interesting. Somebody call it an emotional API. We need to start developing. Somebody said, like, DevOps, it's the thing of the past. So the good thing is I do not have any shares invested in any DevOps companies. I do not make my living for DevOps, so whatever. So we build on new IDs. It's going to be a next new ID. The only thing I hope is that part of the ID is just going to live on in the next ID, and it will be still a cultural change of working things together. Whatever the name, whatever the new thing comes up, for me, that's fine. So I started seeing how we interacted with all these different external services and relying on them. And then I realized it is DevOps. Okay, I might be biased because I started with the term and I see DevOps maybe everywhere, even with my kids or whatever. But I still think it's DevOps. And you see these practices emerging in a way in the field. Like we used to communicate this status page inside our own company, and now we are putting it outside. Like this is the #1 lesson learned from the first big outage on Amazon. They didn't have a status page, and they were just swamped with everybody asking, what's happening? Why is it down? What's happening? And so this is a simple way of communicating your status outwards of your own company. Just exposing your metrics, like whatever happens inside, to somebody's using your services is very helpful. Because when he needs to debug, he can see what's happening underneath. I think that one is really interesting. Is in the bottom right corner, it says severe render errors, which is a totally internal thing of that provider, and a lot of the vendors would just shy away of showing severe render errors in their graphs, but they're very brave, and they give you an insight on communicating how things are happening, so you can deal with your promise to make sure what they're happening, that you're able to shift somewhere else. And they're not saying like it's the green everywhere. They really tell you what's going wrong. Just updating people during that phase, it's communication. Your tool can say it's up and down, but the nice communication that somebody gets going and says like, we're handling it, it's really nice, whether that's through email or any other means. The fact that you can get data out of your service, a really important part. Like something I look for when I use a service, it's easy to get my data into your service, but how can I get the information back out? Simple things. Error definitions, making it clear what happens. I mentioned that before, having an API to back up the data. Like, I've searched, but a lot of the services, it's really hard to reproduce your settings. Like, what if your account is wiped? How do you reconfigure your service? A lot of them just don't allow you to take a full dump and then load back all your settings. You've clicked through the whole API thing, but it's really hard to get the backup and going again. Obviously, there's a Slack slide, and not because they're Slack. It's because they're doing an awesome job at when problems occur, they communicate about it in a very nice human fashion instead of just saying with a chatbot we're available or we're not available. Somebody's really typing, hey, well, how was your day? What are you doing? This is really communicating outside your company. The Post-Mortems, another brave thing a lot of companies are doing. If you had a real failure, man up to describe what actually happened. Don't try to put it somewhere in a dark corner and not explain what happened. These are very insightful, And for me, they get bonus points in when they do these kind of things for choosing them as a service. So it's kind of like in my checkbox if a company does that or not. So even proactive, like your server is degraded, it will go down. Really interesting to get that information as well. It's simple things like a change log of what happened. Simple communicating stuff. And you might say it's trivial and we all do that, but there's lots and lots of services that do not have this kind of communication outward. Just even talking at conferences, I learn a lot about internals of a company when I listen to people speak about their products and so on. It's the willingness to share, like I look at the open source stuff people are doing or how they document things, little cues for that. Some even have their roadmap on there where you can influence and say, this is probably the next interesting feature. Remember the different, the alignment of different promises we make. This is a way to realign and communicate like, hey, this is something we want. This is something that's interesting to us. In all these cases, it's not that I'm actually talking from engineer to engineer, but there is a communication going. Like Fabric, another one, they just listen in on conversations on Twitter. They pick you up. Oh, you're having a problem. I'm going to help you. This is the kind of type of communication I would be looking for. Open sourcing stuff. What I definitely don't want to see is like 16 days to get a response from you. It's like my biggest nightmare is Apple at the moment for these kind of stuff. When I use a new service, I send them a gist about the feedback on what I came across. And the interesting feedback I get from the engineers is that we've used your gist to go to our engineering department and say, this is something that happened, something we should fix. But we had a really hard time convincing them ourselves internally, but because you logged it, we could take that to them. Simple thing, communicating, feedback, and they love it. It's just, how would they know? Obviously, they would see like, oh, you stopped using our service, but this is valuable feedback. I would expect that for my own service as well, to get that feedback, to get better. Even getting direct contact with the engineers. Like, how valuable is that? Not having to file a ticket, wait till somebody respond, but just hop on a channel, engineer to engineer, be able to discuss these things. Okay, they're not sitting next to me, but at least I have an unfiltered, bidirectional conversation with them about my problems. So for me, if you say DevOps, we've been so focused on solving the problem inside our own company. I think now we have to look at how we collaborate across companies with DevOps. It's even going to be harder because we can't, control the other one. So we should be like equals at the table and kind of help that. But to me, that's going to be the next step for DevOps. So the collaboration, not only inside your company, extended to the third parties. Think about promises and know that others are allowed to fail with their promises, and it's your job to keep your promise by going around that others are able to fail. Being able to verify that. And I think to keep your promise to the business, because that's ultimately what we're doing, is that whatever technology and communicating, we're still trying to make the business and the users to keep that. And there's probably a lot of technology people here, but if you think about the CTO, whatever he decides is actually a business decision. So it's not about like, hey, let's use a chatbot. No. The goal is to communicate better, and then for that we might use something as a chatbot or do that. But the goal is not to use a chatbot as such. And that means that to engineer, it's not only about your technology, it's way more. And I encourage you to just take that leap of faith and start communicating with the others in various ways, and not just be focused on the APIs and the technology that you're using. I'm always there. There's a couple of books. The slide's going to be available soon. So obviously, Promise Theory, it's a little bit like heavy, but it's a very interesting read. Serverless in general, there's a good book, and there's a good GitHub that lists a lot of the resources that you want to read about. Sure, on DevOps, many books, but here are a few. The right one on is even a graphic novel. Interested, fun reading on the goal and doing that. And then I have another set of books because I believe somehow we need to figure out a way that we're always repeating the same issue, which is we fall into the technology trap or the religion that technology is going to solve all our problems. And these are a few interesting books that will get you some ideas and show you how our reasoning is influenced, that we believe technology will do the difference, but might also create some downsides that we start being blind about because we are so religious about technology, and whether that's in politics or whatever. Interesting set of books there. And this is my last slide. I thought it was only fitting at an Oracle conference. Like whatever we do in the compute and the serverless, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be where your data is, and that's probably where all the rest is going to build around it. So that's my talk. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks so much, Patrick. Really appreciate you coming out here for the conference.
Thank you.
So how have you been enjoying Oracle Code? You were in the exhibition hall earlier and did an interview. So what's your impression?
Yeah, there's so much that's happening there. Somebody asked me, like, are you still using Java? I said, like, I'm using it for my banking software. But it's been interesting that all these ideas just keeping expanded. I really like the idea of the multiple languages, the polyglot, more seamless operations. So that's
cool.
a good thing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
So, Stephen, please share.
So we'd like you guys to continue engaging with us on different social channels. You can follow the @OracleDevs Twitter handle, where all the tweets are going out. We were live streaming the presentations today on both YouTube and Facebook. So either the Oracle Devs YouTube or the Oracle Devs Facebook channel. And we're engaging with community folks to put content on Medium. So if you are a person interested in publishing, give Bruno and I content, and we'd be happy to publish it on Medium. I see people shaking their heads. We need an article. And if you aren't, but you want to watch some of the content, just follow the Oracle Devs Medium account, and we'll make sure there's lots of great content coming in. So I think we have something to give out, Bruno?
We got some sweaters over here, some hoodies.
Yeah, this is like an Oracle Code tradition.
It's an Oracle Code tradition. It used to be T-shirts. We improved. All right, so who wants a hoodie? All right, I'll try over here one. All right. And one over there.
All right, and I'm gonna give you an easy one.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you.